But US President Joe Biden's troubles don't end at West Asia. China, too, is testing his administration's patience. This encounter in South China Sea, we told you about it yesterday. A Chinese jet buzzed American spy plane last week. Look at how close that fighter was. The American plane's cockpit was shaking. Blinken called China's actions dangerous.
Chinese pilot took dangerous action in approaching the plane very, very closely. There have been a series of these actions directed not just at us, but at other countries in recent months.
He's clearly unhappy. What's fueling this? China's decision to rebuff America. US wants to resume dialogue with China. They want to keep lines of communication open. But the Chinese refuse to play ball. Austin himself wasn't pleased. He has now issued a warning. Austin says the situation could go out of hand.
I'm concerned about, at some point, having an incident that could very, very quickly spiral out of control. But again, I would welcome any opportunity to engage with leadership.
Obviously, he's talking about what happened in the South China Sea. And he's right. Any mid-air confrontation raises the risk of conflict. It has happened before in 2001, again in the South China Sea. A Chinese fighter and a US spy plane collided. The Chinese plane crashed, its pilot was killed. The US plane was crippled. It landed in China. The incident led to a standoff. China did not release the US aircrew. For 11 days, there was considerable back and forth and a lot of blame game too. China demanded a formal apology from the United States. It didn't get one. Instead, US said it had regretted the incident. There was no formal admission of guilt, and the American crew was released. That's how the standoff ended. What would happen if the same nightmare were to repeat? It will not be the same. A lot has changed. China now has a much bigger economy, and its military has undergone sweeping modernization. In terms of pure numbers, China has the world's largest navy. So the PLA won't shy away from a fight.
The conflict between Shiite Iran and Afghanistan's ruling Sunni fundamentalist Taliban is intensifying. Following border clashes in which several people were killed, a regional Taliban leader released a video in which he threatens to march on Iran's capital, Tehran.
A dispute over river water has sparked more clashes between Iran and Afghanistan. Deadly confrontations in the region last week killed at least 2 Iranians and 1 Afghan guard. The shooting took place here near the Milag Zaranj border crossing. Although the reason for the clashes remain unknown, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi earlier this month accused the Taliban of stemming the flow of water to Iran's eastern regions in violation of a treaty signed in the 1970s.
Take my word seriously so that you won't complain later and say you weren't told. Our clear request from the Afghan side is to open the gates of the Kajaki Dam before it's too late.
Since the Taliban brutally took control of Afghanistan in 2021, Iran has repeatedly accused the still widely unrecognized government of disrespecting international law and border protocols. This dispute concerns the Helmand River, which stretches over 1,000 kilometers and was recently dammed by the Afghan side. While it generates power and irrigates land on the Afghan side, fears mount that this could lead to further droughts in Iran. The country has struggled with drought for decades, with nearly all of the country facing some level of water scarcity.
Meanwhile, Israeli defense forces keep close watch on all areas of Iran's nuclear development. A top general recently stating that Israel could soon be left with no choice other than a preemptive attack.
Iran knows it's playing with fire, and they are getting close to what both Israel and the United States are basically messaging as their red line of where they won't allow Iran's nuclear program to go any further.
In what appears to be an effort to gain the upper hand against the West, Iran is reportedly building a nuclear facility deep underground. While it's unclear whether U.S. bombs could reach it, the Air Force recently posted a picture of this bomb designed for such a purpose, adding it's time to test its performance. Gabriel Nerona, former State Department special advisor for Iran, says although diplomacy is not completely off the table, at this point it doesn't seem to be headed anywhere. He says to truly sway Tehran, the Biden administration must threaten consequences the Islamic regime won't risk. Noronha says it would be a mistake to underestimate the regime.
The country that chants death to Israel and death to the United States should be taken seriously, I think.
Why is NATO once again meddling in Serbia? Overnight in northern Kosovo, violence broke out between NATO forces and Serbian demonstrators who are protesting the most recent election, where a newly installed ethnic Albanian mayor was set to take office. The election was boycotted by the town's Serb majority, and the election had only 4% turnout. 4%. Serbia mobilized armored vehicles this morning, and President Vučić spoke on the NATO escalation overnight. So the question is, are we headed for a repeat of what NATO did to Serbia in 1999? We sure hope not. Alexander Pavic is an independent journalist joining us from Serbia's capital.
I think we should all know the root causes, and there's a very interesting document. I've sent it to you a couple of months back. I think people should know why this U.S. involvement. It has really nothing to do with restoring anyone's human rights or protecting them. I refer to this little-known document from 2000. This was this security conference in Bratislava. A high-level German politician. He was their deputy defense minister for a while. His name is Willy Wimmer, and he published a brief report on what he wrote to his chancellor at the time. And this was what he heard that American officials said, why they bombed Serbia in 1999. This is May 2000. The goal stated by high Pentagon and State Department officials at the time was that the goal is to expand to the maximum limits of the old Roman Empire to the east, meaning that all states between the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea are to be integrated into NATO. Well, guess what? That's what happened. We had several waves of NATO expansion afterwards. So even in 2000, call the Russians paranoid. Even in 2000, they had imperial plans of restoring the Roman Empire and expanding to the east.
Fascinating. Yeah. And it makes perfect sense, of course.
Yeah.
This is why NATO is there.